What's up guys, Justin here with the CG Essentials. So in today's video we're going to go through and we're going to check out some of those powerful features contained inside of Antoine Bagattini's different add-ons. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. Alright, so just a note that we are currently in the middle of the Blender Market Spring Sale, meaning that you can get a lot of these for 25% off. I will link to Antoine Bagattini's page so you can see all of his different add-ons. But we're going to start with the #1 most important add-on that he has that everyone should download, whether you want to pay for add-ons or not. So BagaPie is basically Antoine Bagattini's free add-on that you can download, and it comes with a free modifier that has all of his different tools for things like architectural modeling, for things like scattering objects, other things like that. A lot of these tools are built around BagaPie, so if you do nothing else, you should definitely download BagaPie and bring it in. It's also going to give you the option to import geopack files, which are basically asset packs for BagaPie. So make sure you go to the BagaPie page, download the BagaPie modifier, and install it. Alright, so first off, we've got the stone column generator. This is a great one to download. You can get it for free or you can leave a tip, but basically this is a great demo for how geopack files work. So basically it's a collection of column assets that are customizable, and what you do is you go to Edit, Preferences, and in the BagaPie modifier add-on section you can go to Geopack and you can set a location for your packs. And so when you do that, when you pick that location, you can click on the option to install the pack, and once you've installed the pack, it's going to show up in here. And so then once you've installed this, you can access it by tapping the V key on your keyboard. Those geopacks are going to show up, and it's going to give you the option to add any of these additional columns. So for example, I can add this hexagonal column right here. Notice how I can tap the N key on my keyboard and select this object, or go over into the geometry node setup right here, and you can adjust things about this column. So I can adjust the resolution of this object, I can adjust the height, I can adjust the width, other things like that. I can also add things like destruction, which is going to randomize the way that the stone is in here. And then you can adjust things like stone, you can adjust the profile of the column, other things like that. So this is a great example of how to set up those geopack files. Alright, so next up we've got QuickCompo, which is basically a tool designed to help you quickly do compositing effects inside of Blender. So it's got a number of different presets. So this one allows you to do these different color grading or color effects on top of your Blender rendering. So you can adjust things like the tint, you can adjust the lighting, as well as different optics, make things sharper, add glare, other things like that. Alright, so now Antoine has a new add-on called FinalLUT. And it's basically a tool that allows you to do your color grading directly inside of Blender. And so one cool thing about this is designed to be a little bit more industry standard in the sense that it allows you to use your own lookup table color grading files. And so this tool allows you to select different LUT files. Notice how you can set this so that they only show up in your camera. You can disable them completely, or you can set them so they show up always. If you set this to always and then select between these different files, notice how this is going to basically color grade your image directly inside of Blender, allowing you to just kind of click on this and view the different LUT files and what they do. So you can also download those additional cube files and put them in the folder, and then they're going to show up in the list inside of FinalLUT. So if you've got a collection of those different LUT files, you should be able to now bring those into Blender using this add-on. Alright, so next up we've got the BagaRain generator, and this tool is specifically designed to help you quickly generate rain in your Blender models. So it's basically designed to add rain in a single click, and then it can also add a rain shader on top of a material to make it look like it's splashing, other things like that. And so really what this tool does is it gives you two options. It gives you the ability to add rain, which is going to show up in your rendered view. You can see how I'm running this currently in Eevee, but you can also run it in cycles, and you can notice how over in the right hand side you can go into the geometry node setup, and you can adjust things like the density of rain. So let's say I was to knock this down to like 3000, notice how you're going to get less rain in here. You can also adjust things like the height of the splashes that are generated. This is using geometry nodes in order to do that. So you can also add wind. So if you add wind, notice how that rain is suddenly not falling straight up and down anymore. It's falling in kind of a sideways direction. All right, so basically what you can do is you can click on the option for Add Rain Shader and click on OK. Note that this can take a few seconds, but what it's going to do is it's going to add a rain effect to your ground. So what you do is you combine the rain settings with the rain shader with the material in order to simulate things like puddles and other things like that on the ground. And you can kind of see that over in the corner, and you can adjust the rain shader by going into the material settings right here, and you can adjust things like the density of water, for example, as well as the propagation of the water, and you probably want to be in rendered mode for this actually. And then you can kind of see this, but again, I'm on my laptop, which is a little bit slower, but basically you've got the ability over here to adjust like the propagation amount of water that's placed on here. You can adjust the density of the water that's generated. You can kind of see it getting darker in this area right here, but when you combine that with the rain generator, it allows you to create really realistic rain scenes. All right, so next up we've got BagaGrove, and basically what BagaGrove is it's a tool set. Basically Antoine partnered with Evermotion and created a tool set that's designed to help you really quickly create scatters of different objects. So things like different plants and other things like that. It's designed to help you really quickly do like layering of assets and other things in order to create these different groves. And so note that there's a couple different collections, and you can kind of see what's in the collections here. So there's the urban, the garden, and the wild, or you can get the full version, which is going to be a collection of all of those. So you've got your garden assets, your urban assets, and these are basically designed to help you quickly generate vegetation using scatters in here. And so the way it works is you jump over into Blender, and remember you have to have BagaPie, so this is all built on top of BagaPie, and what you do is you install those as geopacks. So you just go into the geopack settings and you click on install, and you install the different Grove files. And so the way this works is you need to select the object that you want to scatter objects on. So in this case I've got this plane. You tap the V key and you activate the garden, and you can pick the different Grove settings, right? So if you wanted a simple one like this one, you would select that Grove. It's going to put you in a curve creation mode where you can draw a curve on your surface. So once it does that, and it's going to import those assets first, but then you can draw your curve. So in this case I'll just draw a simple curve like this one. And what that's going to do is that's going to populate those assets in there for you like this. So say that we wanted a different grove like this one. So we'll do maybe one of the urban groves. And we'll pick maybe this guy right here. So we'll draw this in here. And we'll just keep it very simple. But notice what that's going to do is that's going to basically add this grove in here with these high quality Evermotion assets. And so one thing about these groves is they're editable. So if I select this, I can go into my geometry node settings right here, and I can adjust the amount of different objects that are in here, right? So the things that are on the layer, I can adjust the scatter method that it's using, as well as things like the padding between the different assets, right? So if I turn this padding up, notice I'm getting more spacing between those objects, but you can use this to set if these are going to overlap or not using the sliders. You can basically edit and adjust these like this. And so then once you're done, and again, I'm on my laptop, so this is taking forever, but once you're done, you can render this out and you're going to get great vegetation inside of your scenes. All right, so next up, we've got BagaStreet, which is basically a tool designed to help you create more architectural style objects. So BagaStreet comes with, first off, a collection of like city assets. So it's got different benches, it's got different like bike racks and fences and planters and other things like that. Basically tools designed to help you generate more urban scenes. And so again, these come as geopacks, but they also come with some tools for scattering different objects, right? So arraying objects along paths, as well as arraying objects in grids and circles, other things like that. So if you do any kind of like architectural modeling or that kind of thing, this can actually be extremely valuable. And so there's a number of different tools in here. Like for example, you can drag an object in like this. You can select it and then tap the V key and go into your BagaStreet tools. Notice how there's different options for different kinds of grids. So for example, if I was to do an array along curve with this object, so if I click and drag this like this, notice how it is going to array that object along the curve, but there's probably some things you would want to do with your spacing, right? So you could adjust your distance, other things like that. However, there's a really cool function in here. It's the first option. So if you select this, go to BagaStreet, and you do the element deform draw, what that's going to do is that's going to take the object and deform it along your path like this. So you can use it in order to generate those rails so that they follow along a path. And so you've got other options in here as well. So let's say that we were to add a plane. So I'm just going to bring this plane up and I'm just going to subdivide it. So we'll do a Control R. And I'm just going to add a couple loop cuts in here like this. But say that I wanted to add, we'll go with these ashtrays, or do we have regular bollards? Maybe we'll go with some bollards. Yeah, so we'll go with a bollard. But what I want to do in this case is I want to select the bollard. We can go ahead and turn our materials on, but I'm going to select the bollard first, and then the object I want to scatter it on. But if I tap V, go to BagaStreet and click on Instance on Mesh Border, what that's going to do is that's going to drop an instance, and I probably need to apply my rotation and scale here. But that's going to basically apply an instance on the border of my mesh like this. And so let's say I was to take these two vertices and extend them out. Notice how it's placing these on those borders. And you can adjust the distance in here the way this is placed, but this is super valuable for doing things like that. And so there's also tools in here for adding objects along grids. So say I was to select this object, tap V and go to BagaStreet and do an array grid. What that's going to do is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to create a grid of those objects just like this. And you can set number of objects with the slider in here. But one cool thing about this is you can also add additional objects. So say that I was to drag in another planter. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this planter and drag it into my array grid like this. And so you can actually adjust these inside of the BagaPie modifier. So when you select it, right, these are going to pop up, but you can adjust things like your count. You can adjust random instance picking as well as probability, all those different things. You can add random rotation in here like this, just depending on what you want to do. And you can adjust the seed as well. So you can use this to create different grids and other things like that. So super valuable for like architectural city style modeling. Alright, so next up we've got BagaBatch, which has a free version and a full version. This is basically a tool set designed to help you create previews of different objects in Blender when you're creating them as assets. So what it does is it allows you to basically generate or batch generate thumbnails for assets. And so the way that Blender currently creates the thumbnails for assets is a little bit clunky. This is designed to help you select those and then batch create those assets really quickly. So instead of you having to create assets individually, this is going to go through and it's going to basically render them out and create them as assets for you. And then in the full version, you also have the ability to take different assets and export them into individual blend files. So you can take each one of the assets inside of your library and you can export them as their own blend files. So if you have a bunch of models inside of one model, you can basically use that in order to create those individual files for each one of them. So if you're doing batch creation of assets, you can check out BagaBatch. Alright, so next up we've got the BagaIvy generator. And the BagaIvy generator is probably one of the best, if not the best, BagaIvy generators that I've used. And basically it's a tool designed to help you create really realistic procedural Ivy in Blender. So one of the things I really like about this is it comes with a library of different Ivies that you can use. All right, so you've got all of these different Ivies in here. They all look great, by the way, but they all kind of procedurally create their own look, right? So if you want some color in here, there's Ivies that have flowers, but then there's also Ivies that are more just green, and they're based on real world Ivies, meaning that they're really realistic. And so the Ivy can also be animated, meaning you can make it actually like move around in the wind. So if you want to create like videos with the Ivy, it comes with tools to do that. And so the way this works is you install the BagaIvy generator as an add-on, but notice how if you scroll down, there's actually an option to install BagaIvy's assets as an asset library. All you have to do is click on this button and this entire asset library is going to show up down here for you to use. And so one thing you're going to notice about that, if you go into the BagaIvy generator settings, or if you go into the BagaIvy generator asset library, is notice how you've either got all of the individual parts and pieces in here, like the flowers and the fruits and other things, as well as the leaves, or you've also got options for presets. And so the cool thing about that is that means that you can swap things out inside of your model. But the way that it works is, let's say I wanted to put some Ivy on these rocks. So I'm just going to do a shift click and add all of these rocks. You just need to pick an Ivy down below and draw. So let's say we went with this purple Ivy right here. Notice how we can either import those assets into your 3D view, or you can just select them in the asset browser. But if I click on add new Ivy, what that's going to do is that's going to set this up so I can come in here and draw using the draw tool in Blender to add that Ivy to these objects. And notice how there's three options in here. There's a fast, there's an accurate, and there's a precision. We're currently in fast mode right now. Notice how if I scroll down, I can adjust things like the density of the Ivy, the propagation of the Ivy, but then all sorts of other things like different flowers and fruits and things like that. And so what's cool about this, and notice how I put this flower right here, is I can select the flower and I can select this object right here. And within the flower section, there's actually the ability to add the flower to your collection. And so when you do that, and notice how you don't see anything yet, but if I adjust my probability, notice how I'm going to see this being more likely. Notice how you can use this in order to add additional flowers and also adjust the alignment in here. And again, these assets just look really good when you render them out. So super easy way to create Ivy inside of Blender that's 100% adjustable. All right, so and then finally, let's talk about my favorite Baga add-on, which is the BagaPie modifier. So remember, there's the free version that all of this is kind of built around, but then there's also the asset packs that come along with this. So BagaPie, and we'll take a look at this in a minute, comes with a number of different built-in tools, and you can download these for free, which is why I recommend everyone downloads BagaPie itself. But then he's also got a great, pretty complete asset library within his BagaPie assets pack. So if you want something that's a little bit more all-encompassing, the BagaPie assets pack includes things like plants, it includes things like trees, it's got different rocks, as well as things like tree branches to go on the ground, it's got gravel, it's got all sorts of different stuff. So it's actually a really complete collection of assets. So if you're looking for just like one pack of assets, this is going to work really well. You can definitely check out the BagaPie assets. But the way that that works is when you install this, so inside of your preferences, when you install the BagaPie modifier, you want to make sure that you go down and click on the button for install BagaPie's parametric library. So that's going to install his collection of parametric, like architectural objects in here. And you want those to show up inside of your asset browser, which it will once you click on this button. And then if you get the actual asset pack itself, then you want to make sure that you install those asset pack files as well. And you can see how there's just a ton of different assets contained inside of that asset pack here. So you want to make sure that you install both of those, but those basically work with BagaPie. And so what that means is say that we were to bring in some of these assets. So like for example, he's got a fence right here. Let's go ahead and let's pick maybe this fence right here. And I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees. And so if you tap the N key and you go into the BagaPie modifier, notice how this has the ability for you to adjust things like the height of the wall in here, the height of the timber posts, or the number of timber posts that are in here. So notice how I can bring more of those in. I can adjust those like this in order to get different looks, as well as adjusting the profiles of these different objects. And so then we've got a number of other architectural tools like stairs and tiles and things. And so the stairs, for example, if you pick that stair, you can come in here and you can adjust things like the depth of the stair, the height of each step, the height of the overall stair, as well as things like the width. But then you can also adjust things like the materials. So notice how this is set up where if I was to pick or click on the step material and pick something else, this would go in here as a metal. So I can do the same thing with the stringer and pick materials that are in your model. So these are very customizable and adjustable, and you can adjust everything about the balusters, everything like that. These are all generated using geometry nodes. And so in addition to procedural assets, you've also got tools built in to do things like scattering or creating arrays. So for example, say that I was to pick these 3 bushes, tap the J key, notice how that's going to get me into my BagaPie options, and I can click on the option for Draw with Asset Browser. And so if I draw on this surface using that array function, what that's going to do is that's going to create an array along a path. Well, then BagaPie gives you the ability to adjust things like random scaling, as well as number of objects. So I can bring this up or down in order to create a number of objects, as well as doing things like rotating those objects, other things like that. So you've got tools for creating those arrays built in here, but then you've also got functions in order to do things like scattering objects. And so you can use the asset browser objects, or you can bring objects into your scene. So in this case, I'm just going to bring these into my scene. I'm just going to tap J. Notice how we've got the option in here to do a scatter on this surface. Well, when I do that, what that does is that gives me the ability to crank up the density in here or bring it down, but you can use this in order to do that. And I'm going to bring my minimum distance between objects down a little bit, but notice how we can use this in order to scatter objects along the surface. But not only can we scatter objects along the surface, so right now, for example, I'm going to pick that surface. Actually, I'm going to pick these 2 objects and then pick that surface, but I'm going to tap J, and in this case I'm going to do a scatter paint right here. So we're going to click on OK. And notice that's going to put me in paint mode. Well, what I can do is I can paint in where I want this object to go. So instead of me having to set up all the vertex painting and stuff myself, this actually gives me the ability to do that using BagaPie really quickly. And then again, notice how I've got these multiple different scatter systems in here, and I can adjust things like the distance between objects, the max number of objects, other things like that. So just a ton of tools for creating all sorts of things within Blender. Alright, so just a ton of great resources from Antoine. If you want further instruction on how to use any of these, just leave a comment down below and I can definitely talk about them. I just love having that conversation with you guys. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.